Good morning. Today is February 4th, 2026. I'm Art Blank, and this is the Commissioners' weekly meeting. Commissioner Plant, are you ready to approve the consent agenda as presented, or any preliminary remarks?
I'm ready to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Gilman,
Good morning. I would also vote to approve the consent agenda.
as would I. Let's skip 24A-05470, the Public Service Company of Colorado DSP, and we'll take that up last. And why don't we go to 25AL-0494E, the Public Service Company of Colorado Electric Grid Case. Ms. Friedman, Ms. Harper, or Mr. DeCenzo? Ms. Friedman, take us away.
Morning, Commissioners. I'm Ellie Friedman of your advisory committee staff, and with me today is Ruthie Harper, your commission counsel. So this proceeding comes to you today for procedural decisions and a discussion of supplemental direct testimony. But first, a little bit of background. Public Service filed Advice Letter 2006 Electric on November 21st, 2025. The company requests a $356 million base rate increase, largely driven, according to the company, by investments in its distribution system. If granted, this $356 million increase would result in increases of about 10% per month for residential and small commercial customer bills. Public Service proposes a test year ending December 31st, 2025, and filed 6 months of actual data through June 30th of 2025 with forecast data for the remainder of the year. At the direction of the Commission in decision number C-250924, on January 15th of this year, the company provided an updated revenue requirement study with actual capital additions through October 31st, 2025. With that filing, Public Service states that a revenue requirement study reflecting full 2025 actuals will be available around the end of March. In its initial filing, Public Service also filed an informational historical test year for the 12 months ended June 30th, 2025, in compliance with Rule 3109D. Public Service requests a weighted average cost of capital of 7.46%, comprising a return on equity of 9.8% and a capital structure with 55% equity. Along with its request for an increase in base rate revenue, the company proposes enhancements to its electric affordable program and that would provide more benefits to eligible customers. It also has requests new trackers and deferrals, along with requests to continue existing deferrals. So before returning to some procedural issues, I'll turn the discussion to the Commission as to whether you would like to hear this proceeding en banc, as you decided in decision C-250924, or if based on your anticipated workload over the coming months, you would like to refer this case to an administrative law judge.
I guess for me, although I know we've got a ton going on, given the size of the rate increase being put forward in this case, and given that the last rate case was filed in 2023, I think my preference would be to continue to stick by our prior decision and to hear it en banc, with deep apologies to you both and everyone else. But I think that's probably my preference, but curious to hear from you guys, Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, I mean, I get that concern. I mean, I'd be fine in moving it to an ALJ, but could go either way.
Commissioner Gilman, what's your preference here?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly understand. I think we're trying to balance a pretty significant caseload here, but we've also got a pretty large increase proposed. So certainly understand your concerns. I don't have any opposition to us hearing it, and we'll work out the schedule as we always do.
Is that all right with you, Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, it's fine.
All right.
All right, thank you. So that's 3-0 decision to keep to reverse your decision and to keep this en banc with the Commission. So the next decision point is whether to extend the suspension period.
What was our prior decision? Didn't we originally decide to keep this en banc?
Yes. So I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I was just
You're not reversing
the
your
reverse.
My apologies. You're not reversing. Yes, correct. So the next decision point is whether to extend the suspension period of the tariffs filed with the advice letter an additional 130 days beyond the 120-day extension ordered in that last decision. In light of the time available and the nature of the issues raised in this proceeding, we recommend the Commission extend the suspension period an additional 130 days to August 29th, 2026.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
Okay, so then before moving to a procedural schedule discussion, I'll turn to Commission Counsel Ruthie Harper for a discussion on interventions, discovery procedures, and the company's motion for extraordinary protection.
Ms.
Good morning,
Harper,
Commissioners. I will take up the interventions, the request for pro hoc vice appearance, and Public Services motion for extraordinary protection of certain information. So first, the following parties have filed unopposed motions to intervene in this matter: the City of Boulder, Climax Molybdenum Company, Colorado Energy Consumers, Core Electric Cooperative, Energy Outreach Colorado, the federal executive agencies, the Kroger Company, Sierra Club, and Walmart. You're familiar with each of these parties, so I will not go into any further detail unless you have any specific questions.
none from me, and I don't see any from my colleagues.
So I recommend finding in each case the party's motion has shown grounds for intervention, and I recommend granting the motions. The decision can reflect these are the parties to the case, along with Public Service and staff and UCA who have filed interventions by right. I'll pause for a quick vote.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
Next, requests for certain out-of-state attorneys to appear pro hoc vice in this matter have been filed on behalf of the federal executive agencies and Kroger. I recommend granting these motions, thus allowing Thomas Jernigan, Major Newton, Captain Vondrasek, and Kurt Bohm to appear. Any questions, or do you all agree?
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
Next, UCA made certain requests in its intervention regarding discovery matters, specifically that discovery disputes be referred to an administrative law judge, that the commission impose shortened timelines for the ALJ to rule on discovery motions, and that the commission establish an expedited process for appealing the ALJ's discovery rulings to the full commission. I can give a recommendation or turn it over to you for discussion.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. I agree with UCA that we should refer discovery issues to an ALJ. I'd also point out that the company seems to have filed this case over the Thanksgiving holiday in a way that may potentially maximize rate base while perhaps minimizing the time available to the parties in the commission to process the case. Given that reality, I'm pretty sympathetic to the UCA request to set timeframes for discovery and provide some structure around the right to file a motion to compel and appeal certain issues to the attention of the full commission. Having said that, however, I think I'd prefer to wait until the parties have a chance to confer on the procedural and discovery issues to see if a mutually agreeable approach rises, or at least until we have a more specific proposal in front of us. So I'd just say in our decision today that the commission will by separate order address any proposals for modified discovery procedures after considering the party filings and conferral report. So Commissioner Plant, you okay with that, or other ideas?
Yeah, no, that works.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
does that give you what you need on that one, Ms. Harper?
Yes, it does. So finally, I'll address the motion from Public Service asking for extraordinary protection. Public Service is requesting heightened confidentiality for 3 categories of information: customer information, that is data that does not meet the 1515 rule, such as rate class data and revenue details for classes with fewer than 15 customers. Second, legal invoice information, including billing rates and time spent on tasks, while continuing to redact privileged communications, and litigation strategy. And third, employee compensation information, meaning detailed compensation data for highly paid employees, including salaries, bonuses, and incentive pay. Public Service argues that disclosure could harm privacy, expose employees to harassment, and create competitive disadvantages. Public Service proposes limiting access to this claimed highly confidential information to commissioners, any assigned administrative law judge, advisory staff and attorneys, staff and its attorneys, and UCA and its attorneys. No party objected to any of these requested protections. I can give a recommendation or answer any questions.
Yeah, recommendation would be great.
I recommend finding these protections are appropriate, reasonable, and consistent with past practice, and therefore granting the motion. Access will be limited as proposed, and all copies must be destroyed at the conclusion of the proceeding.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
So next, we will discuss a procedural schedule on the inclusion of interveners through rebuttal testimony as requested by UCA. Given the suspension period of the tariff sheets through August 29th of this year, advisors recommend the Commission direct parties to confer and file by February 13th either a proposed consensus procedural schedule or a conferral report. The procedural schedule must include the filing of supplemental direct testimony by February 26th and an evidentiary hearing that ends no later than June 18th. We also recommend the parties provide comments on the scheduling of a technical conference. In its notice of intervention, UCA requests the Commission direct that the proposed procedural schedule include an opportunity for the filing of surrebuttal testimony by interveners. We recommend the Commission encourage parties to consider interveners' surrebuttal testimony in their proposed schedule as long as the schedule allows for the evidentiary hearing to conclude no later than June 18th. Given the Commissioner's workload and schedules through the end of this month, we are not recommending to schedule a pre-hearing conference, but rather that the Commission address the procedural schedule at a future CWM. So I can turn this to you for your discussion or vote.
Commissioner Plant,
I have nothing to discuss if we wanted to go to a.
yeah, if we can go to a recommendation, that'd be great.
Our recommendation is that the parties file by the 13th either their proposed schedule or the conferral report, and that must include direct testimony by February 26th and a hearing ending no later than June 18th.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
So the final issue today concerns supplemental direct testimony to be filed by the company by February 26th. So advisors have some specific recommendations for supplemental direct testimony, but first I'll turn to the commissioners and ask if you have any that you would like included in that filing on the 26th.
Yeah, I do have some, but why don't you go through yours and then I guess Commissioner Plant, do you have any?
No, I was gonna say the same thing.
Did you want to say something?
No, we can go with the recommendations first and then go.
Okay, Commissioner Gilman, did you have any, or go with
I do not. You can start with Ms. Friedman.
Okay.
Ms. Freeman?
So first, advisors recommend the Commission direct the company to expand on the direct testimony filed by company witnesses Ann Bulkley and Todd Wayner, specifically with regard to hearing exhibit 104, attachment AEB 4. We recommend direction to add a column that indicates the equity ratio for each entity in the proxy group, add a column that indicates the cost of debt for each entity in the proxy group, and add a column that calculates the weighted cost of capital using the cost of equity currently in column 9 and the data from those prior two questions. With regard to hearing exhibit 104, attachment AEB 5, we recommend direction that the company first calculate the market return column based solely on electric utilities, and the proxy group would be fine, and then calculate beta based on relative stock price volatility for each proxy group member and the basket of electric utilities applied in the previous step. Then take that information and recalculate columns 4, 5, and 6. Also, that the company would indicate if stock price volatility, as measured in beta, incorporates the difference in business risk between regulated and unregulated companies. With regard to hearing exhibit 103, table TAWD5, the company should provide in executable format all supporting worksheets and analyses and extend the analysis through 2030. I can continue to the requests from UCA, or these are what advisors are recommending if you wanted to vote on those, or I can do all of them together.
No, let's vote individually. Commissioner
Okay.
Plant, are you all right with the advisor recommendation?
Yes, I support that.
Commissioner Gilman,
Yes, thanks.
as do I.
Okay, so UCA has 4 requests. First, UCA asks Commission to direct Public Service to provide an updated 2025 test year revenue requirement study using an HTY ending December 31st, 2025 with a 13-month average rate-based methodology and without a depreciation annualization adjustment. We note that in its protest letter, but not in its notice of intervention, UCA requested the Commission direct the company to include in supplemental direct testimony a description of all data Public Service plans to update. So we recommend requiring Public Service to provide its most recent actual data for the 2025 test year using a 13-month average rate-based methodology and without depreciation annualization adjustment. We also recommend the Commission direct the company to include a description of all data Public Service plans to update in its rebuttal testimony.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
So next, UCA raises the issue of whether part of the cost of Pueblo 3 Unit 3 should be removed from rate base together with accompanying adjustments, including associated O&M expenses. And we recommend requiring Public Service to provide an itemization of its Pueblo Unit 3 costs that are included in the company's proposed rate base together with accompanying itemization of those associated O&M expenses.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
Third, UCA requests the Commission direct Public Service to provide detailed and itemized expenses for rate case expenses, given that the company estimates outside legal costs at more than $1.6 million and consultant costs at some $224,000. We conclude that this request is reasonable and within the bounds of the protection sought by the company in its motion for protective order. So we recommend directing the company to provide the information requested by UCA.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
So the last request from UCA is a request that Public Service provide detailed and itemized expenses for political influence activities and investor relation expenses. On January 20th, Public Service filed the information required under Rule 3351B for the 12-month period ending June 30th, 2025. So with that, we advisors do not recommend requiring any further reporting at this time.
Commissioner Plant, I know you were interested in this in the last rate case. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
So those are the supplementary direct testimony issues that we had. So I turn it back to you, Chairman Blank.
Yeah, I had a few. As consistent with what we've done in the past rate cases, I'd like to request that the company provide a long-term rate impact model projecting customer rates from 2024, starting with actual 2024 sales, cost, and revenue data through 2040 based on the retail sales and load forecast approved by the Commission in the JTS proceeding. I'd like to see this forecast in an executable Excel spreadsheet that allows for varying input assumption, sales, rate-based growth, weighted average depreciation life, ROE, debt to equity ratio, expense growth, etc. In order to calculate the cumulative impact of input changes on revenue requirement and average customer rates over the 15-year forecast horizon. I request that the spreadsheet be based on hearing exhibit 133, attachment JWI5 from the JTS proceeding that breaks down rate impact by residential customer class. To the extent the company seeks to change the assumptions from that exhibit, I'd request a narrative description of why the change is being made. In addition to whatever runs the company would like to present, I'd also request for informational and comparison purposes an additional run that assumes capital spending on new plant continues to grow at compound annual growth rates of just under 7% that the company is showing from the end of 2022 through 2025, as contained in Mr. Frida's direct testimony, hearing exhibit 102, page 15. While this 15-year forecast may seem like an odd request given a historical test year filing, I believe the long-term rate impact projections go to the central issue in this case, which is placing in the rate base the $3.8 billion in gross plan addition that occurred since the end of 2022. Since this investment is amortized over many decades, it is challenging for me to understand the consequences of the primary decision we're being asked to make without looking at long-term rate impact. So I guess Commissioner Plant, thoughts on that request?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Commissioner Gilman?
I agree.
Thanks. Second, in hearing exhibit 106, attachment NPM 1, Mr. Mueller shows plan additions by month from 2023 through 2025. I'd also like to request total annual plan additions of capital spending for the 3 prior years, 2020 to 2023, presented in a consistent, comparable format showing all 6 years. So I think this is also consistent with what we've asked for in other rate cases. So would you be okay with that, Commissioner Plant?
Yes.
Commissioner Gilman?
I agree.
Thank you both. Just one on O&M spending and various performance metrics. Despite significant general inflationary pressure since 2022, as discussed in the company's direct case, it looks like O&M spending has decreased in most categories. It's hearing exhibit 102, page 16, particularly if the increases in wildfire mitigation insurance are excluded. I'm concerned that this decrease in O&M spending may be a direct contributing factor to the customer service, billing, and reliability concerns that staff documented in 2 reports presented to the Commission in April 2025. I appreciate and found helpful Ms. Howard's discussions of these general customer service and related issues in their direct testimony. To get a more consistent and fuller understanding of these issues, I have a supplemental direct request to the company based on that trial staff report presented in April of 2025 and filed an attachment as attachment B to decision C25047 in 25 AMO 265E. More specifically, I'd like to see the company file into the record in this case in the same format the following data. First, on customer complaints in the same format as shown on page 2 of the staff report. On customer satisfaction shown on page 4. On customer call response time, page 5. On dropped and terminated calls, page 6. And on company contact center staffing levels, page 7. On the number of customers not receiving monthly bills and the average impact, page 8. Total billing complaints, page 9. And public service company staffing levels in the billing department, page 10. I'd request this data and update in a form that is directly comparable to the data, trends, and approaches shown in the April 2025 staff customer service report. Finally, given the April 2025 staff report on outages, I'd also like to understand whether progress has been made on SAIDI, SAFE, CAIDI, CAFE, and the other reliability metrics from the trial staff's investigation into outages. I'd seek this data on a weather-adjusted basis so there's no disproportionate impact from any one storm. I'd also like to request this data so it's available in time for the parties to respond and answer testimony. So I guess Commissioner Plant, comments, thoughts. I guess the idea, the company has presented some information in this case on these metrics, but it would be the request is to get a fuller, more comprehensive look and see if the company has made progress on the problems identified by staff, from almost a year ago. So thoughts, guidance, comments?
Yeah, No, I think that would be great, and I support that that addition. I mean, one of the things I'm interested in, and I know, and it's not really, for application in this filing, but maybe could be explored in this filing, is how we might look at, performance metrics as it relates to, recovery. And in addition to the things that you're suggesting, there's a couple things I'd like to understand a little bit better, and that's around, one of the things that the company talks about quite a bit is regulatory lag. We've seen them increasingly going to the legislature to get rider recovery, which, basically moves us to a large extent to a future test year for all intents and purposes. And what I'm curious about is if the commission were in future filings to look at something like a future test year, what the impact that would have on return on equity, because obviously lower risk and lower regulatory lag should lead to a lower ROE, but I just don't know how much. And then how we might be able to tie some of that recovery to achievement of performance criteria similar to some of the things that you've identified there. And that's the only additional thing. Again, not for this, for determination in this particular case, but for consideration in future cases to get us some information around how that might be structured and what kind of impact it might have on ROE.
Would you like to put some language in this supplemental direct uh, request asking the parties to take a look at that?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, exactly. It's something I'd like to hear from the company and from parties as we might, sort of contemplate what could happen in future filings, to get more aligned with some sort of a performance structure.
all right. Um, I wonder if this will have to be a TBC decision, Ms. Friedman, uh, to look at that language. But do you have more questions for Commissioner Plant on that, or do you have uh, or do you want to try and do that in the TBC process?
Well, we were hoping to get this decision out quickly because of the requirement that that the parties file something by next Friday. Maybe what we need to do is we can do the supplemental direct test questions as a separate,
Oh, I like
as a
that.
separate order, although we are requiring that those be filed by February 26th, which does not give the company, it gives them about 3 weeks to accomplish this. So the decision would need to go out very quickly.
How about this? Why don't we do uh, maybe one order with the process and most of the supplemental direct, and then we can do a supplemental direct order. Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, I mean, my sort of request to the parties and to the company isn't, as I said, it's not, specific to this case, but would like to develop a record in this case that we might consider as, the next case comes up, and that we might include in an order if we got some good information around different ways to structure some sort of a performance-based structure, we would have a record within this case to address it. So it's not, supplemental direct, one of the challenges of supplemental direct is it reduces the time for everybody, and I don't want this to impact that. So I would be fine having it as a separate order.
All right. Does that give?
We'll work with council and with Commissioner Plant, and then we'll we'll work on getting this back as a TBC. But we will, as you suggested, we'll go ahead with the order based on the main discussion today.
Yeah, and the
Okay,
advisors and the UCA, and I think mine doesn't need to be
okay.
BBC unless my colleagues want to say it. Commissioner Gilman, thoughts anywhere you'd like to go?
Yeah, I mean, I had some thoughts along this same line as Commissioner Plant, but I was not necessarily conceiving them as something that needed to be posed as a supplemental direct question or memorialized in like an order. And I think just really hoping the parties will explore here, especially the interaction of this electric rate case with kind of the assortment of performance incentive mechanisms and riders that are already in place. I think especially given kind of the introduction of the GMAC as a new rider, what does this entire picture now look like in terms of risk and opportunity for the company to earn a fair return, kind of given this assortment of mechanisms now at play in Colorado. And I think, it makes it certainly more difficult to compare from one utility to the other when there are these different mechanisms at play that kind of influence likely the risk profile and potentially their opportunity to earn a return. So just want to, express and hoping to see some interaction with the parties on that point and kind of where we go from here, especially with an increasing amount of the revenue requirement being collected through riders rather than through kind of the ordinary course of business that we used to see. And, what implication does that have as we go about these phase one rate case proceedings? So I wasn't necessarily envisioning that, in a decision, just really posing that to the parties, presuming they're listening and have some interest in the same issue. So Commissioner Plant, I don't know if that's similar enough to where you were going or if you're still looking for.
Well, and I guess what I heard from both of you is less supplemental direct, and maybe there's a second order that goes out that just poses questions to the parties. So it's not necessarily supplemental direct. It doesn't have to be answered as part of that late February filing, but perhaps it'd be useful to put in writing questions from the commission to the parties. So that's what I'd suggest listening to both. Thoughts, Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I think that would be an approach that would work for me, certainly. I mean, my interest is really to get input from the various parties, not asking a question in a hearing and having them say, well, I don't know, we'd have to think about that. But
Right.
to get an indication ahead of time that, this is something that we're very interested in pursuing and would like to get, some of the input from the parties to develop a record in that case.
All right. So I think the concept we're brainstorming around is a second order, just questions the commission is posing to the parties and would like to see addressed in the answer testimony filings, rebuttal, or at hearing. So Commissioner Goman, with that proposed concept, anywhere you'd like to go?
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm open to discussing with advisors and counsel if that needs to be in order, if this is good enough. And I think just like the framing for this, the context we're in, right, is an environment of really rapidly escalating costs for the utility. They're hoping to pass on to ratepayers, as well as really some significant performance issues that you went over, Chairman. And so really trying to ensure that we're viewing the whole picture here of alignment of incentives and of the whole ecosystem in which they're operating, which now includes more riders, more performance incentive mechanisms, and really I think are concerned about affordability and how we continue to put more emphasis on the performance as a major goal here rather than just investment as their main driver for profit.
All right, so let's leave it like this, Ms. Friedman. If advisors and counsel can talk to Commissioners Plant and Gilman and see if they prefer an order, if they just want to stand on these oral comments, I'm good either way. I think that order would need to be TBC if it is an order. And sometimes I think it's helpful to formalize the question. So I'd be fine with an order. I had one last thing. Finally, I'd request that the company present an additional analysis, assuming a lower common equity to debt ratio, maybe 50, say 50-50. But depreciation was accelerated in the most reasonable and acceptable manner to keep the key credit matrix constant with what the company presented in its direct case. And I'm just trying to explore a trade-off between movements in the common equity to debt ratio and depreciation in terms of its impact on the company's free cash flow and credit metrics. So, Commissioner Plant, any thoughts on that?
No, I'd love to hear more about what you're thinking.
Commissioner Gilman?
No issues.
All right, that's all I got, Ms. Friedman. Does that give you what you need?
I think it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate it. Let's go to the next one. The application 25A0355E, Ms. Dundas, Ms. Harper, Public Service Company appeal of El Paso County permitting decision.
Good morning again, Commissioners. The issue for decision today is whether to grant El Paso County's motion for determination of law that was filed on January 16th. The county filed this motion under Colorado Rule of Civil Procedure 56H, asking the commission to resolve a legal question before the hearing. Specifically, the county argues that three statutes, the 1041 statute, the appeal statute, which is section 292108, and the PUC Title 40 statute must be read together and harmonized. According to the county, that harmonization requires the commission to give substantial deference to the county's decision denying the 1041 permit. I'll review the parties' positions, discuss the applicable standard, and then give my recommendation. So the county asserts that local governments have unique expertise in land use, public health, and safety, and that the legislature intended to preserve meaningful local control. They argue the commission should adopt a legal standard that affords substantial deference to local findings. Public Service opposes the motion, arguing it is procedurally improper and legally unfounded. They contend the statutes require an independent de novo review, not deference, and that adopting the county's approach would undermine the commission's statewide authority. Staff also opposes the motion, stating the appeal statute already provides a clear framework for review. Staff says that adding a substantial deference standard would insert language not found in the statute and could strip the commission of its authority. CEO agrees with Public Service and staff, emphasizing that none of the statutes or cited cases support deference to local decisions. Now, as far as the applicable standard, before even getting to the merits of the motion, the threshold question before you today is whether to take up this legal question before trial or leave it for the post-hearing statements of position. Rule 56H allows a court to decide a pure question of law before trial if doing so will significantly impact how the litigation proceeds. The purpose of resolving such question is to enhance the ability of the parties to prepare for and realistically evaluate their cases, allow the parties in the court to eliminate significant uncertainties, and to do so at a time when the determination is thought to be desirable by the parties. This is discretionary by the court, or in this case, the commission, not mandatory. Any questions, or should I proceed to a recommendation?
No, if you can go to your recommendation, that'd be great.
I recommend denying the motion and leaving these legal arguments to the post-hearing statements of position and the commission's final decision. Granting the motion would not significantly change how the hearing proceeds. Even under the county's proposed standard, the commission must still weigh the 9 statutory factors and develop a full evidentiary record. The motion does not narrow issues or reduce complexity. It simply proposes a legal interpretation that can be addressed later in the post-hearing statements of position. So I recommend finding the motion does not justify a pre-hearing ruling and exercising your discretion to deny the motion. And if you agree, then I also recommend clearly stating that this decision resolves the motion. Doing so sets expectations and keeps the hearing focused on its purpose, which would be admitting and cross-examining the pre-filed testimony and not revisiting the legal arguments in the motion.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree with both recommendations.
Commissioner Goman,
I also agree.
as do I. And that can be an ABC decision. 25A-0534E Black Hills QSP, Mr. Felder.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Corey Felder with the advisory team here at the commission. On December 23rd, 2025, Black Hills Colorado Electric LLC, doing business as Black Hills Energy, filed an application seeking commission approval of a quality of service plan, or QSP, for a 4-year term starting January 1st, 2026 through December 31st, 2029. The company is seeking approval of the QSP and the applicable tariffs. While the commission has required a QSP from Black Hills in the past, the commission's electric rules do not currently require Black Hills to file a QSP. Rather, this application complies with a QSP stipulation that Black Hills agreed to in its most recent rate case, which was approved in decision number C250183. In its QSP application, the company proposes 7 metrics addressing service adequacy, reliability, and safety. The service adequacy metrics would track customer complaints, customer bill accuracy, and customer satisfaction survey results. The reliability metrics would track customers experiencing multiple interruptions, or SEMI-6, customers experiencing long interruptions, or SELI-18, and Census Block Group System Average Interruption Duration Index, or SAIDI. The safety metric would track the speed of streetlight repairs. Each of the metrics proposed is accompanied by proposed targets and maximum penalty amounts developed with input from the Office of Utility Consumer Advocate and Commission staff. The company is proposing a maximum total penalty of $340,000 per year across all 7 metrics. Moving on to interventions, on January 8th, 2026, UCA filed an intervention in this proceeding as a matter of right and requested an evidentiary hearing. UCA indicates that it plans to inquire into whether the proposed metrics sufficiently address the service quality needs of Black Hills ratepayers, whether the metrics and penalties should be increased, expanded, or modified, how disproportionately impacted communities are affected by the QSP, and whether service quality differs between disproportionately impacted and non-disproportionately impacted communities, and whether approval of the application is in the public interest. Today, the commission has several decision points before it related to the QSP application. First, whether to deem the application complete. Second, whether to either grant or deny the application or refer the matter to an administrative law judge. I'm happy to provide a recommendation if the commission would like one.
I think we'd like one.
All right. Advisors recommend that the commission deem the application complete pursuant to Electric Rules 1303 and 3002 and refer the matter to an administrative law judge by minute entry.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Goman,
I also agree.
as do I. And that can be, minute entry, no order. Thank you, Mr. Felder. 25A-0548E Black Hills joining SPP Markets Plus, Mr. Davis.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ron Davis of the Commission's advisory staff. On December 30th, Black Hills Colorado Electric filed an application for Commission approval to participate in the Southwest Power Pool Markets Plus Day-Ahead Regional Market and to recover the associated costs through its Energy Cost Adjustment, or ECA. Black Hills states that it filed the application because the Commission has approved Public Service Company of Colorado's request to join SPP Markets Plus, and since the company is an embedded entity within the Public Service Balancing Authority area, its customers will incur Markets Plus costs regardless of direct participation in Markets Plus. Black Hills admits that it cannot state with certainty that its customers will realize net benefits from participation in SPP Markets Plus. However, as an embedded entity, Markets Plus costs will flow to the company's customers through service charges from public service without corresponding benefits of market participation unless the company itself joins Markets Plus. Rule 3753 anticipates a final written decision addressing Black Hills' application within 150 days of its filing. After the application was filed, the Commission set a shortened notice and intervention period. Only 2 intervention pleadings were timely submitted. Tri-State Generation and Transmission Association filed a motion to intervene, and the Colorado Office of the Utility Consumer Advocate filed a notice of intervention by right with a request for an evidentiary hearing. Tri-State states that it may seek a future determination from the Commission regarding its own participation in SPP Markets Plus within the Public Service Balancing Authority area. UCA raises no specific issues with the filing or the relief requested by Black Hills. So the matter is before you this morning to take the next procedural steps, including whether to deem the application complete, to establish the parties, and to take initial steps in developing a procedural schedule.
Do you have a recommendation for us?
Yes, I recommend that the Commission adopt an ABC order deeming the application complete, establishing Black Hills, Tri-State, and UCA as the parties to this proceeding, and requiring the parties to confer on a procedural schedule. The Commission should set February 20th as the deadline for Black Hills to file either a motion to approve a consensus schedule or a report setting out any competing proposals.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman?
Also agree.
As do I. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Is there more?
No, an ABC order, fine?
Yeah, that was part of your recommendation. So
Okay.
thank you. Proceeding number 24A-0547E, Public Service Company of Colorado Distribution System Plan. Mr. Mendelson, Ms. Dundas, take us away.
Alrighty. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Mike Mendelson of your advisory team. I'm joined by Ian Fetters and Dan Greenberg, also of your advisory team, and Lindsay Dundas and Wyatt Foreman of your Commission Council. The Commission issued its decision in the company's distribution system plan on December 18, 2025. Most notably, the Commission denied immediate recovery through the new GMAC rider referred to as Type 1 treatment for asset health and reliability investment, finding that those expenditures did not meet the statutory definition regarding GMAC eligibility. Specifically, the relevant statute passed as SB 24218 says, if the Commission finds that the projected distribution activities and corresponding budgets affordably and strategically benefit or advance the goals described in subsection 7B1, the distribution activities are qualifying cost recovery must occur through the Grid Modernization Adjustment Clause. Section 7B1 also refers to the broad goals of the statute, including greenhouse gas emission reduction, beneficial electrification, increased reliability, and increased resiliency, and refers to similar goals that are delineated in Section 5A of the statute. The Commission found, as WRA and other parties argued, that the company's DSP was designed to only maintain reliability, not increase it, and therefore the company's asset health and reliability, or AHR, spending did not meet GMAC eligibility. AHR is the largest component of non-capacity DSP investment, representing about $1 billion over the 3-year DSP period, or 34% of total proposed DSP spending. The Commission also expanded the concept of the performance-based framework as referenced in Section 5E of the statute, finding GMAC eligibility could be determined appropriate in future proceedings if the Commission met certain metrics, if the company met certain metrics, and indicating its intention to add metrics relevant to customer service, service reliability, and hosting capacity analysis, or HCA, data availability and usability. At a high level, Public Service warns if recovery is capped or delayed, the company will calibrate its spending to reflect that directive, which will necessarily reduce the pace and scale of grid modernization and limit the benefits customers expect from the distribution grid that serves them and that the state expected when passing SB 24218. So the first argument they make specifically is that asset health and reliability investments should be treated as type 1 distribution activity because they are critical to support the objectives of SB 24218. The company says SB 2418 does not require the attainment of specified reliability metrics as a predicate for type 1 GMAC recovery, yet the Commission adopts certain intervener positions that increased reliability must be established before the Commission can determine whether AHR-related distribution activities and corresponding budgets strategically and affordably advance state energy policy objectives. They also argue that the Commission draws a distinction between mitigation and improvement that lacks support in law. The creation of a unique standard of review for AHR-related distribution activities and corresponding budgets is extra statutory. The company also noted that the strategic importance of AHR is amplified by the evolving complexity of the distribution system, distributed energy resources, or DERs, electrification, and advanced grid technologies require robust asset health to function effectively. So the decision point before you is, does the Commission affirm its initial decision to reject GMAC eligibility for AHR investment, or does it reverse course as requested by Public Service? I'll pause here for your recommendation or can provide a recommendation.
I mean, for me, I'd probably affirm our initial decision for all the reasons outlined in our prior order. As for me, nothing in the RRR has convinced me to change my vote. Although it wasn't the basis of my vote, I'd also point out that our DSP order landed on total GMAC recovery in roughly the same range as the legislature did in trading off 2024-2025 investment against rate impact. More specifically, the legislature capped total spending to limit the rate impact to 1.25% of revenues, which is roughly where we're landing. In response to the company's comments about limiting investment, I just clarify that the company is free to make the investment it deems appropriate through normal rate processes, including those endorsed by the Commission in this DSP, to achieve the broad goals of reliably, affordably, and efficiently providing grid services. So those investment decisions, as they always have been, are in the discretion of the company, or slow down or speed up as needed. So I'd vote to stick to our original decision. Commissioner Plant?
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman, I know you didn't really agree with our original decision. You wanted to cut it more, but thoughts?
Yeah, well, that was related to the capacity investments, but yeah, I certainly agree with you. I would stick to our initial decision, which I think was well reasoned, especially to ensure that the investments being made here actually go to the statutory intent to increase reliability. You know, I think fundamentally to agree with the company's RRR, I would have to suspend a lot of what I know about the regulated monopoly structure. As you pointed out, the company has the ability and the obligation to make the updates needed to the system. And I'm not sure necessarily what to make of what I saw as kind of a threat to slow that investment if they don't get the exact pace of cost recovery that they're looking for. That certainly does not seem a way to ensure we're continuing to appropriately serve the customers. So certainly hope that that is not the case. I think we've ended in a reasonable place here to ensure we have a way to hold the company accountable for achieving the statutory intent by using these tools available.
Does that give you what you need on that one, Mr. Mendelson?
Yes, it does. So the next issue is related to Type 2 performance-based framework. As additional background, Section 7B3 of the statute within the cost recovery section states for projected distribution activities and corresponding budgets that the Commission finds do not benefit or advance the goals described in Section 7B1 of this section, which, as I mentioned earlier, include GHG emission reductions, BE, and increased reliability and resiliency. Recovery may occur through the GMAC if the utility meets the criteria established in the performance-based framework approved by the Commission's subsection pursuant to subsection 5E. In that subsection, it says the DSP must include a performance-based framework, which must consist of 1, applicable interconnection timelines, 2, applicable energization timelines, and 3, flexible interconnection and demand management timelines. In paragraph 281 of the decision, the Commission determined that these statute sections are intended to ensure the Commission retains its fundamental authority to determine appropriate cost recovery mechanisms for all activities that fall outside those strategically and affordably advanced goals referenced in paragraph 283. The Commission also employed a GMAC eligibility cap of $100 million for 2027 and $200 million for 2028 for all non-capacity distribution activities in order to maintain affordability contingent on the development of a holistic and comprehensive set of performance criteria. In paragraph 509, the Commission directed the company to file by February 1, 2026, its proposal on specific metrics. That date was recently pushed back 60 days following the Commission's decision in this RRR. The company argues that the decision unduly limits opportunities for Type 2 distribution activities, and the Type 2 framework should be updated to align statutory objectives and timing. Public Service contends the performance-based framework and the decision steps well beyond the parameters of SB 24218, and particularly Section 7B3 and 5E. Public Service contends the statute envisioned a phased performance-based approach for Type 2 recovery, focusing on 3 areas only: interconnection timelines, energization timelines, and flexible load and demand management. Instead, the Commission added at least 3 more types of metrics to those found in 5E: customer service, reliability, and HCA data availability and usability. Public Service argues the plain language of the statute's use of may in authorizing recovery was intended to reflect that recovery is contingent upon attainment of these performance parameters, not to confer unfettered discretion to deny recovery altogether, arbitrarily cap recovery, or layer in far-reaching and undefined performance metrics bearing little, if any, interrelationship to the metrics expressly codified in statute. Public Service also seeks reconsideration of the Type 2 distribution caps of $100 million in 27, $200 million in 2028. They say approving the plan without providing a timely, clear, and workable recovery mechanism for Type 2 distribution activities risks undermining the very objectives the Commission seeks to advance. So there are 3 related decision points that I will present to you. But Chair Blank, I know your thinking has evolved on this issue, and I was wondering if now would be a good opportunity to share your perspective.
Yeah, thank you. As I view the company's RRR, I thought it did not really constructively engage with our offer or approach to developing a performance-based framework, even though it seemed to me like all upsides in terms of accelerated cost recovery with no downside. Given the company's apparent disinterest or even hostility to the framework we proposed, I don't really see a great path forward as the process we tried to develop assumed that the company would be at least a partially willing partner. So for me, I'd probably back off trying to implement a performance-based framework in 2026 and just say that in the next DSP, we may be interested in looking at metrics regarding customer service, reliability, and HCA data availability as appropriate at that time. I'd also like to ask advisors and council to explore combining the next QSP with the next DSP as part of a consolidated process. To get the company's attention, I think we may need to link the QSP issue to cost recovery. In terms of our authority, I continue to believe that the word may grants us broad authority and would say so in this order. But given that the company disagrees, I'd just leave it until the next DSP to figure out the exact boundaries of this land ridge. As such, I would not specify a cap, as I don't see any workable performance-based framework based on this record in this case, given we found the company's interconnect and energization proposal deficient and there is no meaningful alternative. So for me, I'd wait until a future process or the next DSP to implement a performance-based framework. So I'd grant the company's RRR in part, but would not seek to move forward with a performance-based framework or a cap now. For me, I think we've also agreed to take a look at these issues in the context of the rate case. So, given that there's already witnesses in that case speaking to them, I think that may be a quicker and better and more efficient forum to look at some of these issues. So that's where I'm landing. I don't know. I know this is hitting you guys cold, but given the hostility of the company to this, I'd probably just be willing to back off. But really curious to see where you guys are coming. And I know you had some concerns about the hosting capacity analysis that you wanted to bring forward. So, Commissioner Plant, anywhere you'd like to go?
Yeah, just want to sort of clarify. So if we're taking out all performance-based components of this, would that just defer, to the next rate case?
To the next
non-
DSP.
Okay. Well, yeah, whichever comes first, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm a little baffled by the company's argument around limitations that are in a statute that clearly says that that you should put in a performance-based framework. It says that you must include three things, one of which is being the next DSP. We did include those things. To me that's a floor more than a ceiling. And I don't see any language in the statute that would suggest otherwise. But similar to your comments, it seems as though the company is just going to create barriers as we're trying to implement that. So yeah, I think just deferring it to the next DSP or the next rate case as a regular expenditure makes sense.
I don't know, Commissioner Goman, anywhere you'd like to go?
Okay, so the practical result then of your direction would be anything that we had determined was in that May category of type 2 would be treated under the ordinary course, brought to the next rate case, no opportunity for GMAC recovery in the later years of this plan. But that you want the next DSP to address a more fulsome performance-based framework, identifying those areas essentially that we've already identified as part of that kind of apparatus from the start.
Yeah, exactly. I think you said it exactly better than I did.
I believe Mr. Mendelson, Ms. Dundas, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a requirement or a plan to pursue an energization timeline rulemaking, which would interact with this performance-based framework. So maybe, Mr. Mendelson, you can help me bring into focus what the chair is looking at in terms of kind of deferring the creation of this larger performance-based framework works with the effort that we need in order to go about that energization timeline work and what that implies with regard to the type 2
Yeah, I
recovery.
don't know if I could answer that fully, but right, we do have the DSP rulemaking to take up shortly after this proceeding is complete. Also note there is currently a QSP M docket ongoing that staff is leading up. I need to get it, and there's also your prior investigation into these issues a bit, which is still ongoing. Commissioner Gilman in 0464. But my apologies. The the docket that's open now is 25M 0265E. So when that looks into QSP issues, but not necessarily how they interrelate with the DSP.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm trying to figure out in particular with the energization rulemaking coming, how does that interact with and influence this type 2 situation if what the commission's saying is even with that one aspect, in our view, we don't have a full performance-based framework that's like fully accounts for all of the necessary aspects. So I don't know, Ms. Dundas, I'm just trying to figure out what we're kind of obligated to and like what that mechanics looks like even after, say, that energization timeline piece is done.
Thanks, Commissioner Gilman. So to back it up a little bit, I think pursuant to Senate Bill 24218 for this DSP, the company was supposed to propose an interconnection timeline performance-based framework pursuant to Section 5E. The other two, demand load management and interconnection, have deadlines of the next DSP for implementation. I believe the commission's prior decision rejected the company's proposal for the portion of the performance-based framework that was supposed to be implemented here. So if the commission's decision today is to essentially cancel that notice and comment period process that was established by the prior DSP decision, then I think my understanding of what the commission's saying is that there would be no performance-based framework, so established, therefore no type 2 recovery for this DSP. So if we're on the same page there's, I believe, like 9 or so things that were listed as part of that notice and comment process to establish a performance-based framework for this DSP. Those would all be something that would be reviewed, as the chair said, in a future process. Pursuant to Section 6A of the DSP statute, the commission must open a rulemaking to establish target, average, and maximum energization timelines, necessary updates to the existing interconnection rules, and a few other things. So that rulemaking will happen shortly and will at least review those aspects so that those rules are in place for the next DSP. As to the other areas of interest of the commission, I know there was like HCA, load map availability, customer service, peak demand, load shape shaving, and a few others. The commission could consider, and I don't think this has to be answered in this decision today, but expanding that rulemaking to address some of those criteria as well. Or if it chooses not to do that, that would just be then something for the company's direct case in the next DSP. If that's helpful.
Understood. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. I was trying to sort it all out in my mind. So it sounds like certainly the energization is some of the key pieces, but some of the other pieces could be added to that rulemaking to essentially like make progress before the next DSP around that performance-based framework, but then kick the implementation of such to the next DSP.
Yeah, I don't see why not from a statutory perspective. I think the statute requires us to review those two things. And if the commission chose to expand their rulemaking to do other priorities as well, that's something it could choose to do in its NOPR. Presumably some of the concerns the company raised in its RRR would also be raised in that NOPR about how that relates to the GMAC statute. That would be a question for a different day. And I make no promises on staffing availability for expanding that NOPR, but the statute wouldn't prohibit you from looking at things prior to the next DSP.
Okay. Understood. Thank you. Sorry, I had to like lay out the whole landscape for myself here to consider. So, you know, I think you might have laid out the best path forward. Like I think combining, Chairman, your concept of kicking this, but also seeing the extent to which we could or should expand that NOPR and make some progress on these intentions in between. You know, my apprehensiveness to this comes from the point that I'm happy for the company to get GMAC recovery if we actually have a performance framework in place such that customers get better service and get the promises laid out in the legislation in terms of improving reliability and improving some of these services for customers. But I agree with the point. So like, to me, that's my main priority is like making sure that actually happens. But I do buy the point that we don't have that apparatus now, given the company's kind of repeated position here. It seems as though we're just pushing a rope to get it done here and now with what we have left of this process. So I think kind of combining future rulemaking and more specific directives for the next DSP in terms of our expectations for the performance-based framework and how that kind of colors the commission's view on type 2 recovery. That's probably the best we can do right now, which, you know, I think is honestly disappointing. I would rather just achieve the objectives of the legislation straight out the gate. But I don't think with this filing, we've been set up in a way to do that. And so the priority is to ensure in using the tools we've been given by the legislature to also achieve the goals that were laid out. And I just don't think we have a full assembly to do that with where we've ended up with this adjudication, which is unfortunate, but I do think we have the pieces to put that together for next time, which is probably our next best step.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly where I landed, and I appreciate your bringing in that rulemaking as another forum to move forward with the interconnect and energization issues on a maybe more accelerated basis. So really agree with everything you said and would like to see it incorporated into the order. So I don't know, Commissioner Plan, anything else?
No, I agree.
Does that give you what you need to draft your order on this issue, Mr. Mendelson?
Well, if we could go quickly through the specific decision points, I think that would be helpful. So on the decision point 1 in this topic area, does the commission continue to interpret section 7B3 and the word may in particular such that it allows the commission to apply other conditions on recovery? I think I heard a yes, but I just want to confirm.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, but we're not going to try and implement it in this case. So I think I would reaffirm our initial interpretation, but there's nothing in this case based on that interpretation. And I think the exact boundaries of that may will need to be decided either in the DSP role or the next DSP.
All right.
So but let's take a vote. Commissioner Plant, that okay with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, I agree with our interpretation of it. The reality is, though, that we just don't have a performance framework that the company's willing to implement. So, you know, yeah, I agree with that.
Commissioner Gellman?
I agree.
All righty, thank you. So in the next sub item, we will not, I will not take that up. That was referring to the specific additional metrics that we're applying to the PBF. But on the third one, just to confirm, the commission applied the cap of 100 million in 2027, 200 million in 2028. And I just want to confirm that that is now retracted and
Yes.
and determined. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Mendelson, can I just clarify something there?
Yeah.
For confirmation from the commissioners, in the DSP, the company had proposed certain activities for type 2 recovery directly. So your decision today is that there is essentially no recovery pursuant to section 7B3 of the GMAC statute for this DSP.
That's my understanding of
Okay.
where we're at. Commissioner Plant,
Yes.
Commissioner Gellman.
Correct, and I would say that, just to make crystal clear, that stands aside from the DSP itself, which is the company's intended actions and spending to support reliability and the like, which will continue to be pursued through the ordinary course of business.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Demnis. So the next few items are related to Boulder's request for clarifications and or request for requirements of new specific requirements. First, Boulder asks the commission to clarify the decision and to admonish public service from continuing to underinvest in its distribution system, or even worse, accelerating such underinvestment, and instead to encourage public service to prioritize projects and investments that support and improve system reliability, regardless of whether GMAC recovery is available in full or in part, or whether public service must seek recovery in a future rate case. I'll pause here for your discussion or vote, or can offer a recommendation.
Yeah, if you can offer a recommendation, that'd be great.
Yes. So advisors agree and recommend the commission remind public service of their long-term duty and ability to profit from the commercial arrangement of serving roughly half of Colorado Electric customers. And also the company is authorized to raise capital through debt and equity to meet its mandate, and that those financing costs are recoverable, so that it should not slow down any investment just because it did not get GMAC recovery on these items.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gellman,
Agreed.
as do I.
All righty. Next, Boulder asked the commission to clarify that public service is not prevented in the future from seeking mandatory type 1 GMAC recovery for asset health and reliability investments to the extent public service demonstrates that such improvements strategically and affordably improve reliability and resiliency. I believe Commissioner Gillman spoke up on this, but if we can get a formal vote, whether the commission agrees or not with Boulder's statement.
Commissioner Gellman, you want to restate your comments?
I mean, I'm fine with Mr. Mendelson's, if he wants to give a recommendation on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
can you?
In
Yeah.
Sure.
appropriately responsive terms for Boulder.
Advisors also agree with this Boulder request that the commission should clarify that its immediate decision is certainly not designed to eliminate the opportunity to recover AHR spending through the GMAC, and that it is our expectation that GMAC recovery will be allowed once metrics are set and fulfilled by public service.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gellman.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Mendelson. It's not just the expectation. I think it's the hope. I would rather have a performance-based framework that allows this opportunity to earn through the GMAC, paired with appropriate performance-based framework. And hopefully that's where we get in the future.
Me too. I agree.
Thank you. So next, Boulder requests the commission direct public service to present in its next DSP application proceeding information that will enable the commission to find that the utility has met its reliability, resiliency, improvement burden. I could pause here again for your discussion or offer a recommendation.
Yeah, if you can go give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
Alrighty, so advisors agree here again. Perhaps this was assumed to be true since public service cannot receive favorable cost recovery without it. But it would be helpful for the records for the company to specifically indicate how it has improved reliability, resiliency in its next DSP.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gellman,
I agree.
as do I.
Alrighty. Thank you. Next, Boulder requests that the commission recognize Public Service's commitment to make near-term improvements to the feeders that are part of the Feeder Performance Improvement Program, or FPIP, and to hold Public Service to such commitment. Boulder suggests that the commission should make very clear that it expects Public Service to continue to improve the reliability of its system, and especially these worst performing FPIP feeders. I'll pause for your discussion again or can provide a recommendation.
I couldn't agree more. Uh, Commissioner Plant,
Yeah, I agree as well.
Commissioner Gilman.
I agree.
All righty, thank you. And then finally, on Boulder's clarification requests, Boulder requests the commission order Public Service to report annually in this proceeding for each FPIP feeder a description of A, work plans for the coming year and the associated budget, B, work actually performed for the precedent year with the associated budget, C, if no work is planned or performed on the feeder, and why such a decision is made. Boulder says this information will create more transparency and hopefully more incentive for Public Service to follow through on promises made in the record to invest in and improve reliability on the worst performing feeders, as well as to inform future budgets and work plans. I'll pause for your discussion again, or can provide a recommendation.
Yeah, if you can give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
All righty. So advisors agree some reporting on FPIP progress should be made. We disagree that a unique report on FPIPs needs to be made. This can be done as part of GMAC filings or the next TSP.
Commissioner Plant,
Agree?
Commissioner Gilman,
Also agree.
as do I.
All righty. So I will turn it over to Mr. Fetters now. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ian Fetters with y'all's advisory staff. I'm first going to talk about the GMAC carrying charge. As background, Senate Bill 24218 requires a true-up on the GMAC rider, and the decision in this proceeding required the true-up be filed on April 1st. Public Service initially proposed in this proceeding that its true-up would include a symmetrical carrying charge applied to the over or under recovery balance at the company's most recently approved weighted average cost of capital, or WACC. However, staff proposed an asymmetric carrying charge only to be applied to over-recovered amounts at the company's most recently approved WACC. In the decision, the Commission adopted staff's recommendation for an asymmetric carrying charge, agreeing with staff's interpretation of Senate Bill 24218 that an appropriate financing cost can differ between positive and negative balances, and that an asymmetric carrying charge would prioritize ratepayer protections, reflect asymmetric information between the company and ratepayers, and would be consistent with the TCAD where distribution costs have been recovered previously. Public Services RRR requests the Commission reconsider its decision and adopt what they describe as a balanced approach that applies appropriate financing costs on both sides of the ledger. Public Service disagrees with the Commission's interpretation of appropriate financing costs in the statute, says the statute calls out both positive and negative balances, and asserts that if WACC is appropriate for over-recovery, then something more than zero should apply to under-recovery as well. Public Service also claims the asymmetrical treatment would incentivize the company to spend up to the cap to avoid over-recovery exposure, which would be contrary to concerns about capital spending and cost discipline. And I can pause for discussion or have a recommendation.
I know, Commissioner Plant, you felt strongly on this. You want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I just agreed with staff in terms of the incentive structure that it puts in place to make sure that we're not over recovering, and there is already an asymmetry that exists in favor of the company, and I feel like this is a good balancing out, and also a consumer protection sort of measure. So I would reject the RRR and just stick with our original decision.
Commissioner Gilman,
I agree.
as do I.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm now going to move on to hosting capacity analyses and related issues. In the RRR in this proceeding, parties made a variety of requests related to hosting capacity analyses, or HCAs. I will open with Public Services requests related to HCA availability and security, followed by timeline requests with a few additional HCA clarifications to come later in the deliberations. I will first quickly recap some background on the HCA issues. There are two types of HCA maps which have been at issue in this proceeding, generation and load HCAs. Generation maps historically have been provided in blurred format on the company's website, with unblurred maps available through a secure web portal upon access approval and the signing of a non-disclosure agreement or NDA. Load HCA maps have only been made available in this proceeding to certain interveners through the Commission's highly confidential data protections. In this proceeding, Public Service advocated for maintaining the existing confidentiality of HCA data. However, several parties criticized the availability of the company's HCA maps, with some recommending eliminating the NDA entirely for the generation HCA maps, and others recommending substantially modifying the NDA to make it more feasible to sign. Several parties additionally advocated for the publishing of the load HCA map outside of this proceeding. Arguments for modifying or eliminating the NDA and making the load map public took several forms. In response, Public Service largely leaned on the security concerns of making HCA data public. In the decision, the Commission required Public Service to make the unblurred generation map available without an NDA and to make the load map available without an NDA as well, though Public Service was allowed to continue using the remainder of its existing authentication process. The Commission noted that Rule 3541B only allows restriction to the web portal in some circumstances and cited the rejection of NDAs in its past decisions, found that the risks described were vague and speculative or only tangentially related to grid security, found no evidence that Public Service would be different from other utilities in this regard, and found advantages to making the data widely available. Chair Blank dissented on the requirements to make the maps available without an NDA, but did note that the existing NDA had several provisions that are commercially unreasonable. In its RRR, Public Service requests the Commission reconsider its decision to make the load map available outside of the DSP and, quote, believes that a new proceeding to provide the time and space to analyze these critical security measures and appropriate data protections would be in the state's best interests. It also asks to reconsider the elimination of the NDA for the unblurred generation map, as well as for the load generation map if it is published. And if the Commission doesn't reconsider, the company, quote, urges the Commission to stay the requirement and open an additional proceeding to examine how the company can mitigate the impacts of this lost risk control tool through other means. The company emphasizes that the threat is real and offers another example of a recent attack on energy infrastructure in Germany. While the company acknowledges limited concrete details in its testimony regarding risks, it portrays this as reflective of the seriousness of its security concerns and the risk associated with providing explicit information in this proceeding. Public Service notes that it, quote, offered the Commission secret confidential briefings with key stakeholders such as the FBI on this issue. The company disagrees that the NDA can be excluded from its security process around the HCA maps, asserting that the other elements of its processes need an NDA to encourage the handling of data in a manner consistent with the company's data security needs and legally address data breaches by users. It reemphasizes that NDAs are common tools that limit risk, including by the Commission itself. Finally, it states that in absence of the NDA, the company would need to reevaluate its portfolio of security protocols and potentially heighten other security measures to compensate, including alternative methods that may risk restricting access to information. And before I get to decision points on this issue, I will note that ACE and AEU filed a motion to leave to respond to this section of the company's RRR. And to discuss that, I will pass it to Mr. Foreman of your Commission Counsel.
Mr. Foreman.
Thank you, Mr. Fetters. Good morning, Commissioners. Wyatt Foreman of your Commission Counsel. As Mr. Fetters mentioned, on January 22nd, 2026, ACE and AEU jointly filed a motion for leave to respond in response to the Public Services RRR, specifically regarding the Commission's HCA requirements. ACE and AEU assert Public Services RRR introduces new facts not in evidence and makes materially misleading statements, and they therefore seek leave to respond to the company's RRR pursuant to Commission Rule 1506B. Specifically, ACE and AEU contend Public Services references to a recent critical infrastructure fire in Germany are extra record, misleading, and based solely on industry advocacy, not official policy changes, and thus improperly attempt to influence the Commission with foreign incidents unrelated to HCA data. ACE and AEU also assert that Public Service raises for the first time in RRR the contention that if NDAs are prohibited, it may impose alternative security measures that, quote, risk restricting access to information. ACE characterizes this as a veiled threat to violate Colorado law and commission directives, which mandate public access to HCA data under SB 24218 and Rule 3541. In its response to Public Services RRR, ACE and AEU urged the Commission to reject Public Services' latest arguments and reaffirm its prior decision eliminating NDAs for HCA. ACE argues the German incident is irrelevant and improperly introduced because it was never part of the record and bears no demonstrated connection to hosting capacity data. Moreover, the company's characterization of the event as triggering a policy reassessment in Germany is misleading. The cited articles reflect only an industry advocate's opinion and not an official regulatory action. ACE emphasizes that the Commission has already found the company's security concerns to be vague and speculative, and notes that much of the same information is publicly available through other utilities and even Google Maps. ACE then asserts that Public Services claims suggesting that alternative mechanisms could limit access to HCA data if NDAs are not reinstated constitute new assertions introduced for the first time and amount to coercion. Such threats, ACE contends, directly conflict with Colorado law and Commission rules, which require utilities to publish HCA data on a public portal. ACE underscores that the company lacks any legal authority to impose unilateral restrictions, and that the Commission must not allow the company to undermine its directives through vague promises of heightened security measures. Finally, ACE asks the Commission to strengthen enforcement. It recommends affirming the NDA elimination directive, setting binding compliance deadlines, and explicitly prohibiting any alternative measures that would restrict access. ACE also urges the Commission to signal its intent to impose civil penalties for future noncompliance and consider penalties for the company's past failures, such as missing quarterly HCA updates since late 2023. On January 27, 2026, Public Service filed a response in opposition to the motion regarding the party's assertion that the company materially mischaracterized the German incident. Public Service counters that its reference was limited to publicly reported events to illustrate evolving global debates on transparency and security, and not to assert any formal policy change in Germany. The company maintains that citing real-world incidents is reasonable and does not constitute introducing new evidence or misrepresenting the record. Public Service also rejects ACE's characterization of its RRR as a veiled threat and states it did not propose unilateral restrictions, and instead, the company emphasized that any replacement security protocols, if required, should be developed through a commission-supervised process to avoid unintended consequences. Public Service asserts its goal is to maintain broad access while ensuring robust security and not to impose undue limitations. Public Service concludes that ACE's claims are unfounded and urges the Commission to deny the motion for leave. But if leave is granted, Public Service requests that the Commission consider its clarifications when evaluating ACE's substantive arguments. The company reiterates its position that eliminating the NDAs without a structured replacement could inadvertently lead to less effective or burdensome security measures, and therefore seeks a transparent Commission-approved process for any changes. And I can continue to a recommendation on the motion.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Council recommends the Commission grant ACE's motion and consider its response to Public Services RRR, as well as the substance of Public Services' response. Council is persuaded the motion satisfies Rule 1506B by demonstrating an attempt to introduce facts not in evidence, by citing to the German incident and alleging the company may restrict access to HCA data if the Commission eliminates the NDA requirement. Council appreciates Public Services' attempt to clarify its RRR, but ultimately recommends the Commission find the motion satisfies the procedural requirements of 1506B and grant ACE leave to respond. We can pause here for a vote on that motion.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
Thank you, and I'll hand it back over to Mr. Fetters for further discussion on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. So the two decision points are whether to reconsider making the load HCA map available outside of the DSP and whether to reconsider the elimination of the NDA. And I will pause for y'all's discussion.
Well, I'll jump in first. For me, I found that several of the core provisions in the company's proposed NDA were not commercially reasonable or really close to it. At the same time, I take the security concerns raised by the company seriously and believe that executing a commercially reasonable NDA is entirely routine and would give the company the protection it is seeking. So for me, I'd prefer to require a commercially reasonable NDA as the best way forward, but I don't think I carried the day last time, and I'm not expecting to this time, because it was just the provisions they tried to include in the NDA were just not reasonable, and I understand where you guys are coming from, but perhaps take the security concerns more seriously. But anywhere you'd like to go, Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I wasn't persuaded by the company's argument. I think that IREC and ACE and others have made a pretty good case and given examples of other places where these NDAs aren't required. It hasn't led to any sort of security issues, and in fact has increased access and participation. So I would reject the triple R.
Commissioner Gellman?
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Plant. And just to clarify, no one here has dismissed the company's concerns or potential for a threat here. I'll point out this is not even the first proceeding in which these exact issues have been addressed. It's at least the third. And here we are. And so I think to your point, Chairman, the company could have modified some of the provisions in its NDA that were found as the most objectionable, and that is not what they chose to do. So we were left with a rather binary choice here. And so I agree with Commissioner Plant, the way to move forward here, especially given the really legitimate uses that could be very helpful to the system in optimizing its use and cost moving forward, really win the day in terms of the balance that we were considering.
So I wouldn't mind if you could just drop a footnote, just expressing my dissent. That'd be great, Mr. Fetters.
Certainly will do that. Next up, we have a series of requests from IREC related to timelines around the HCA. I will discuss these items collectively, then go through the decision points, including the timelines themselves, and a couple of related requests requested by ACE. In the decision, the Commission instituted several requirements for improvements of the company's HCA rollout. Many of these improvements were given specific timelines in the decision, but others were not. IREC notes 5 specific items which did not have firm deadlines established: the publishing of nodal results and limiting criteria, the publishing of substation locations, compliance with the 1515 rule, the elimination of the NDA, and the publication of the load HCA map. IREC requests a timeline of 30 days after the decision on this RRR for each of these items. IREC asserts that establishing timelines is critical to achieving the goals of Senate Bill 24218, that not having a timeline makes it more difficult to consider compliance enforcement actions, and notes that the company has failed to live up to timeline commitments from past decisions. IREC states that the company should already have data available for nodal results, limiting criteria and substations, and so says 30 days would be reasonable, and also recommends that the company be required to include limiting criteria information in the HCA user guide concurrently with this data being published. With regards to the 1515 rule, while the Commission adopted IREC's proposed framework, IREC notes that the framework included a gray area of model outputs, and IREC requests a compliance filing within 30 days in which that gray area would be addressed along with response time. With regards to the NDA requirement and load map, IREC reiterates the value of making the data available and notes that the company has already created the load map for this proceeding. Finally, ACE filed RRR, which states that it supports IREC's application in its entirety, reiterating the importance of compliance enforcement and that public service has missed past deadlines on these issues. ACE recommends that the Commission adopt the timelines in IREC's RRR or comparable near-term deadlines to clarify that failure could result in enforcement actions such as penalties, and to require compliance reports demonstrating completion of each requirement, and to allow responsive comments. So with that, the first 5 decision points are whether to implement the 30-day timeline for each of the 5 items called out by IREC, and I can pause for discussion, take them up individually, or have a recommendation on them collectively.
Why don't you give us your collective recommendation, and we'll take it from there.
Advisors recommend granting IREC's RRR and requiring all 5 items within 30 days of this RRR order. Advisors agree with IREC that specific timelines are crucial for successful implementation of HCA analysis, and that the items which were not given specific timelines in the initial decision are items that the company should be able to implement with relative speed. With that, advisors also recommend granting the user guide be modified to outline the limiting criteria concurrently with the inclusion of this data on the HCA map.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gellman,
I also agree.
as do I.
Thank you, commissioners. The next decision point in this space is whether to require compliance reports with these HCA items as recommended by ACE. And advisors agree with ACE and recommend that the commission require compliance filings in this proceeding, demonstrating that they have completed each one of these HCA improvements on the required date, and to allow comments on those reports, both for those timelines approved in this RRR as well as those in the initial decision.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gellman,
Also agree.
as do I.
Thank you. The last item in this series is whether to clarify that failure could result in enforcement actions such as penalties as recommended by ACE, and I have a recommendation on this one.
That'd be great.
Advisors recommend reiterating the findings from paragraph 344 of the initial decision to not require penalties at this time or in this proceeding, but to consider the timelines established here in this RRR decision as part of the greater consideration of compliant enforcement options in the future.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
I
Commissioner Gellman,
also agree.
as do I.
Thank you, commissioners. That's all for HCA's for the moment. I'll now turn it to Mr. Greenberg.
Mr. Greenberg,
Good morning, Commissioners. Dan Greenberg of your advisory staff. My first issue has to do with the SWEEP NRDC capacity planning methodology proposal. In the decision, the Commission noted that the company's decision to add a project to the Grid Needs Assessment, or GNA, and capital budget was not based solely on the exceedance of an asset's planning load limit, PLL, but also considers factors such as the asset age, the project's ability to mitigate multiple contingencies, the speed of load growth, and other factors. For this reason, the Commission found no evidence that either the staff or SWEEP NRDC capacity planning proposals would significantly affect project selection or the capacity budget. However, the Commission found that the project commitment methodology proposed by SWEEP and NRDC would provide an informative counterpoint to the company methodology and directed it to include a comparison of the SWEEP NRDC exact methodology to the company's methodology for each load scenario in direct testimony supporting its next DSP. The company's RRR criticizes the SWEEP NRDC methodology for, one, failing to address multiple issues with a single project, as the company's methodology does. Two, failing to consider needs driven by contingencies, thereby increasing risk and limiting the company's ability to respond to planned and unplanned outages. Three, failing to consider the necessary upstream planning time for some projects. And four, failing to account for the multiple budgets, scenarios, and sensitivity studies required in the decision. Rather than this alternate methodology, the company requests that the Commission require it to provide no fewer than 3 different planning scenarios to provide for a thorough comparison. SWEEP and NRDC filed a motion for leave to respond in response to the company's RRR on January 23rd. The Commission set response time to this motion at its weekly meeting on January 28th, requiring the company to file any response no later than January 30th, which it did. Before we continue on to the substance of the issue, I'll first pass the discussion to Mr. Foreman to lead you through a discussion regarding the merits of the SWEEP NRDC motion and the company's response.
Mr. Foreman,
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Hello, commissioners. I'm back with one more motion here. As Mr. Greenberg mentioned, on January 23rd, 2026, SWEEP NRDC filed a motion for leave to respond in response to the company's RRR regarding the SWEEP NRDC time-based exact modeling methodology. SWEEP NRDC argue, pursuant to Rule 1506B, that public service mischaracterizes the exact methodology in its RRR and introduces new facts into the record. Specifically, SWEEP NRDC asserts public services claim that the SWEEP NRDC approach is not holistic and would lead to more projects and higher rates is inaccurate and supported, and that public service suggestion that the methodology is flawed because it omits critical system data like the Denver metro area is not a flaw in the methodology, but was only due to data access limitations for illustrative analysis. Sweep NRDC also assert public service misrepresents facts and introduces new facts by claiming the methodology does not accurately reflect the timeline for bringing on new projects. The parties assert their methodology would likely identify fewer overloads, not more, and public service has the data to implement it accurately. Sweep NRDC asked the commission grant leave to respond and accept its response and partially deny public services RRR application, maintaining the requirement that the company include the Sweep NRDC exact methodology in its next DSP. On January 30th, Public Service filed a response in opposition to the motion. The company argues Sweep NRDC's motion fails to satisfy Rule 1506B, but asserts that even if the rule's procedural standards are met, the motion underscores the impracticality of Sweep NRDC's methodology, which Public Service characterizes as conceptual rather than operational. The company maintains there is no clear shared understanding of how the methodology would be implemented, and that competing descriptions of inputs and application show it lacks specificity for real-world planning. Regarding the specific issues raised in the motion, Public Service asserts Sweep NRDC's methodology excludes N-1 contingency risks, a foundational principle of system planning, and therefore this omission makes the method incomplete and unsuitable for comparison. The company also maintains Sweep NRDC's analysis omitted the Denver Metro Division, the most complex and load-dense area, including it would require deviations from the exact methodology. Public Service continues to maintain the methodology would lead to more projects because it ignores multi-risk coordination and outage constraints, and contrary to Sweep NRDC's claim of fewer overloads. And the company asserts the proposed time-based approach lacks operational flexibility and does not account for coordination with transmission planning, which is required under the federal tariff. Public Service asked the Commission to deny Sweep NRDC's motion and grant the company's RRR, removing the requirement to use the exact methodology in its next DSP. And I can provide a recommendation here as well.
That'd be great.
The Commission, Council recommends the Commission grant Sweep NRDC's motion for leave to respond and consider its response, as well as the information provided by Public Service in its response to the motion when deciding on the RRR. The company's claim that it requires an additional 9 to 12 months for transmission planning represents an attempt to introduce new facts into evidence, and the motion therefore satisfies Rule 1506B standard. The Commission can then consider Sweep NRDC's response as well as the response provided by Public Service. And I can pause here for a vote.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree.
Commissioner Goman?
I also agree.
As do I.
Okay, great. I will now hand it back over to Mr. Greenberg for further discussion.
Great. So now on to the substance. The decision point here is just whether to maintain the Commission's prior decision to require the company to use the Sweep NRDC methodology as a comparison point, or to grant the company's RRR to not require that it implement that methodology. I have a recommendation if you'd like, or can pause here for your discussion.
Yeah, if you could give us a brief recommendation, that'd be great.
The company's RRR arguments and its response to the Sweep NRDC motion make it clear that this additional analysis would not provide a meaningful comparison to the company's internal planning methodology. Advisors believe requiring the company to attempt to implement the proposed methodology would therefore serve no useful purpose and only create significant additional work for the company. We therefore recommend granting the company's RRR and rescinding this directive while requiring the company to present grid needs assessments and corresponding capacity budgets for no fewer than 3 load growth scenarios for comparison in its next DSP proceeding.
Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I agree with the recommendation. I don't know that it doesn't give us any information. I think we originally, I think that the company kind of inferred that we were requiring them to use a methodology for determination, which we were just using it for information and comparative purposes. But I take the company's argument. And I would also note that we're requiring asset loaded models in the next DSP. And so we should have more useful information in the next case around the company's models and how it relates to loading, along with the 3 different low, medium, and high load forecasts.
Commissioner Goman?
Yeah, I agree with your recommendation, Mr. Greenberg.
As do I, and as well as Commissioner Plant's comments. Keep going, Mr. Greenberg.
All right. The next issue is the determination of the capacity budget. UCA was the sole critic of the proposed $1.36 billion capacity budget. UCA recommended that the Commission reduce the company's proposed capacity budget by 10%, direct the company to focus on short-term investments, and mandate the incorporation of large distributed energy resources, such as community solar gardens and off-site solar, as viable mitigation tools for both N-0 and N-1 risks. The Commission's decision found no record support for UCA's request for a 10% reduction in the capacity budget. And while it did note numerous and significant concerns regarding the company's modeling and forecasting processes, rate impacts, and a failure to optimize non-traditional distribution solutions, the Commission found that the company had demonstrated that existing conditions and near-term load growth were driving the need for the majority of the capacity budget. UCA's RRR suggests it is incorrect and unfair to characterize its budget recommendations as arbitrary, as the decision does. UCA asserts that any arbitrariness can be attributed to the company's poorly supported budget proposals and cites UCA testimony supporting the conclusion that the company's DSP budget is inflated. UCA characterizes the Commission approval of the capacity budget as, quote, arbitrary and capricious because it is inconsistent with the Commission's own findings in the decision. UCA claims that in failing to modify the DSP budget in accordance with its discussion of affordability, the Commission, quote, has failed to engage in the reasoned decision-making necessary to regularly pursue its authority, end quote, citing case law that Commission decisions that are arbitrary and capricious and irreconcilably inconsistent must be set aside. To support this characterization, UCA cites the Commission's finding in paragraph 50 of the decision that the company had provided reasonably sufficient support for its capacity budget, and contrasts this with the statement in the same paragraph that, quote, the company repeatedly assured parties and the Commission that the proposed capacity investment is based on capacity checks alone, but then places no analysis or results within this record for meaningful investigation by the Commission and parties, end quote. In UCA's view, the finding of reasonably sufficient support for the capacity budget is contrary to both the evidence and the Commission's other findings in the same paragraph. UCA states that its witness testimony reinforces the need for a more cost-effective, evidence-based approach to planning, and cites his arguments for the flat 10% reductions it recommends across all subcategories of the capacity budget, claiming these are not arbitrary, but, quote, are based on an expert's response to deficiencies in the company's plan and thoroughly explained in testimony. So I can pause here or provide a recommendation.
We'd appreciate a brief recommendation.
UCA has identified some potential modeling improvements for the company to consider in the future, but neither UCA nor any other party presented evidence that the shortcomings UCA alleges create significant or even appreciable load overestimates during the pendency of the DSP, let alone anything resembling a specific quantification that would justify the 10% budget reduction UCA advocates. Advisors note that the Commission has required the company provide a comparison of the forecasts presented in this proceeding to actual measured asset loading in its next DSP application. That comparison will provide insight into load seers, the distribution model, load seers accuracy, and any methodological changes to improve accuracy in the future. UCA's criticisms of load seer lack any description of why any resulting forecast inaccuracies would necessarily lead to higher capacity needs. However, even granting the validity of UCA's criticisms, advisors note company and party testimony that the proposed capacity budget for the 3-year period of this DSP is driven by currently existing and near-term constraints rather than by load growth due to electrification. Further, the workshops in this Commission held in conjunction with proceeding 23M-0464EG, as documented in decision R24-0242-I, contribute substantial evidence in addition to the asset loading data the company submitted in this proceeding that the scarcity of available distribution capacity is impeding both economic development and beneficial electrification. While the spatial allocation problems UCA discusses need to be addressed, the record indicates that any inaccuracies they result in are likely to be limited within the time frame of this plan. UCA makes no effort whatsoever to substantiate its reasoning for the magnitude of budget reduction it proposes, other than to state that the 10% reduction it promotes is based on the opinion of its expert witness. However, a close reading of that testimony reveals no more basis for the conclusion that the capacity should be reduced by 10% than it does for the conclusion that the budget should be entirely eliminated. Given that neither UCA nor any other party presented reliable record evidence on which to base an alternate to the company's proposed budget, advisors recommend denying UCA's RRR on this issue.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Goman,
I also agree.
as do I.
Thank you. And now on to the asset health and reliability budget. The company proposed a 2026 through 2028 asset health and reliability, or AHR, budget of $1.026 billion. This budget is intended to address infrastructure that's reaching the end of its useful life or is experiencing higher failure rates, and that, as a result, will negatively impact the reliability of service. UCA proposed substantial reductions in 5 of the 10 subcategories of the AHR budget, resulting in an overall 14.7% or $252 million reduction. For each category where it proposed a reduction, UCA provided qualitative reasoning, but did not explain why the shortcomings it alleged justified the precise level of budget reduction it advocated for, nor did it provide even qualitative evidence providing the validity of the alleged shortcomings. It merely asserted that these shortcomings exist and that budget reductions were therefore necessary. Although the Commission did not accept the AHR budget reductions UCA advocated, finding that they were arbitrary and not tied to any specific calculation, it did find merit in some of UCA's qualitative concerns regarding transparency and the potential for overlap between AHR budget subcategories and, I'll just start that one again. Although the Commission did not adopt the AHR budget reductions UCA advocated, finding they were arbitrary and not tied to any specific calculation, it did find merit in some of UCA's qualitative concerns regarding the transparency and the potential for overlap between AHR budget subcategories and between the AHR undergrounding subcategory and the undergrounding budgets approved in recent wildfire mitigation, transportation, electrification, and mountain energy proceedings. In addition to excluding AHR expenditures from the GMAC, the Commission therefore required the company to file an annual report cataloging all proposed and completed investments to facilitate oversight of the company's investment activities. As it did with the Commission's decisions regarding the capital budget, UCA characterizes the Commission's approval of the AHR budget as arbitrary and capricious, and asserts that this approval fails to ensure just and reasonable rates, thereby benefiting the company and unfairly burdening ratepayers. UCA asserts that the Commission's findings that, 1, the company, quote, reasonably supported its need for the proposed non-capacity investments, and 2, UCA's concerns about lack of transparency and potential overlap between subcategories and across programs had merit, that those 2 points are mutually exclusive. UCA argues that the Commission must act in this proceeding if it believes UCA's concerns have merit or the company's proposal lacks the transparency necessary to determine whether or not it is in the public interest. I can pause here or provide a recommendation.
You can give us a brief recommendation, that'd be great.
As with its RRR advocacy regarding the capacity budget, UCA makes no effort to justify the magnitude of its proposed budget reductions. It simply refers to the testimony of its expert witness, who merely asserted that his proposed budget subcategory reductions were justified because of the very general high-level criticisms he leveled against those subcategories. While advisors continue to agree with the decision's finding that some of these criticisms have merit, we also continue to find no support in the record for any specific level of budget reduction. As the decision notes, the company bears responsibility for maintaining the reliability of its distribution system. In advisors' view, the budgets it proposes to do so remain largely opaque, and the decision appropriately puts in place an annual reporting requirement that is intended to bring greater transparency to these expenditures and, importantly, keeps them out of the GMAC. The company therefore retains the burden of demonstrating the prudence of its AHR expenditures in a future rate case. Since UCA's RRR does nothing to revise the decision finding that its AHR budget recommendations were arbitrary, advisors recommend denying the UCA RRR on this issue.
I agree.
Commissioner Plant, Commissioner Gutman,
I also agree.
as do I. Let's take a 5-minute break before we jump into the staff RRR. So come back 11:05. Keep going, Mr. Greenberg.
All right, I'll move now to discussion of demonstration projects and pilots. First, the NCORD and Pivot Energy demonstration projects. In the decision, the Commission approved the NCORD and Pivot Energy demonstration projects described in the DSP filing. Staff asked the Commission to rescind its approval of the NCORD and Pivot Energy pilot demonstration projects and allow parties to take any positions they deem appropriate when the company requests cost recovery for them. Staff notes that the company chose not to propose these projects as pilots because it doesn't believe they would qualify under the Commission's rules. Staff observes that the company did not request any Commission approval of these projects and notes that the company is already moving forward in implementing them. Staff argues that if the Commission doesn't rescind its approval, it will be in the position of having approved pilots that do not comply with DSP rules and previous Commission decisions, and for which neither prudency nor cost recovery has been addressed. Staff further notes decision language that no party opposed the proposed projects as part of the Commission's reasoning in approving them. However, staff states that if the company had requested such approval, staff would have opposed that request. Staff states that if uncorrected, this error will deprive parties the opportunity to argue potentially adverse positions and develop an evidentiary record related to these projects and the appropriateness of their structure and prudency of expenditures if and when they are brought forward for cost recovery. It asks the Commission to rescind its approval of these projects. So that's the decision point in front of you, whether to maintain the approval stated in the decision or as staff requests rescind that approval. And I have a recommendation if you'd like.
If you can give us a brief recommendation, that'd be great.
Staff is correct that the Commission inappropriately and prematurely stated its approval of the NCORD and Pivot Energy projects. Testimony of company witness Beth Chacon indicates that the company was seeking Commission approval of neither of the projects nor their cost recovery in this proceeding. As this is the case, advisors recommend that the Commission rescind that approval, but state that the rescission is without prejudice to the merits, i.e. that it is making no ruling here on the value or cost recovery for these projects.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman.
I also agree.
As do I.
And my last issue for you today concerns the Smart Panel Pilot program that was proposed by the City and County of Denver. In the decision, the Commission directed the company to work with Denver and other interested parties, other interested stakeholders, to develop and propose a smart panel pilot through the 90-day notice process, and specified that the pilot would be funded through the Market Innovation Fund that was established in the company's most recent Clean Heat Plan proceeding. Staff opposes the Commission's directives regarding the fielding and funding of a smart panel pilot through the CHP Market Innovation Fund on both substantive and procedural grounds. Staff argues that the record contains no evidence that the smart panel pilot satisfies the criteria established for cost recovery through the Market Innovation Fund, and contends that the pilot has only a tenuous relationship with the core purpose of the Clean Heat Plan, which is to reduce emissions associated with the public services gas utility. And staff observes further that the City and County of Denver did not request Commission approval of a pilot, but rather requested that the Commission, quote, direct the public service to submit a smart electrical panel pilot project. Citing CCD, that is City and County of Denver answer testimony, staff argues that if the Commission wants to approve a smart panel pilot, its directive should be for the company to develop and submit a proposal in its next DSP application. It argues that this approach would be consistent with Rule 3533, ensures that the decision is supported by evidence, and would not run afoul of the Commission's requirements regarding the use of the Market Innovation Fund. I will pause here for your discussion or can provide a recommendation.
Yeah, if you can give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
Advisors suggest that a smart panel pilot would be directly responsive to Rule 3533, and that smart panels could both bring down the cost of conversions to heat pumps as well as limit the contributions of the resulting new load during coincident and non-coincident peak hours on stressed distribution assets, i.e., the likely targets of non-wire alternative projects. In contrast to the staff contention that a smart panel pilot would have, quote, only a tenuous relationship with the core purpose of the clean heat plan, advisors suggest that this relationship would be quite direct and obvious. By avoiding the expense of an otherwise necessary service upgrade from the utility, smart panels have the potential to lower barriers to electrification, thereby enhancing a CHP's success in reducing emissions from residential heating. Staff also suggests that the proper place to consider a company proposal for this pilot would be in the next DSP application in 2027. Advisors recommend rejecting this staff suggestion, as this would delay pilot implementation by several years. However, to avoid potential complications that could arise from directives that cross proceedings, advisors now recommend that rather than submitting the pilot through the CHP 60-90-day process and recovering costs through the Market Innovation Fund, the Commission directed the company work with interested parties to design a smart panel pilot and cost recovery proposal, and to submit the proposal in this proceeding within 90 days of the RRR decision. Any party comments would be due within 10 days of the filing, and the Commission would render a decision on the proposal no later than 30 days after the filing of comments. Additionally, advisors recommend directing the company to address in its direct testimony for the forthcoming DSM, BE, TEP, and CHP application, the current state of smart panel technology, the status of the smart panel pilot as of the application filing date, and the company's position on the role this technology could and should play in company implemented or virtual power plant programs.
Commissioner Plant.
Yeah, I would agree with the recommendation, and I do think that this is some critical information to get prior to the next DSP for a variety of reasons, not least of which is that the grid terms that we hope to see in the next, fully fleshed out in the next DSP could be greatly impacted by these technologies. And so trying to understand the way in which they'll contribute to the system, I think, is pretty critical prior to there. And I agree with all of the recommendations. The one thing I would suggest or throw out there for your guys' consideration is that there's a proposal that that they submit a proposal in this proceeding within 90 days of the RRR decision. And I was wondering if we thought that 60 days would be sufficient, just because that would move the implementation time to prior to the peak summer load, and then perhaps we could get a couple of summers of experience prior to the next DSP. But that's the only modification I might suggest.
Commissioner Gilman.
Yeah, I'm trying to think that through. I'm not at all confident that moving them to a 60-day to kind of try to establish some of the parameters of the pilot links to that early of implementation of devices that would still hit the summer. So I appreciate your where you're going with it, but I don't know. Also, there could be significant, I mean, to the extent there's a lot of overlap here and with clean heat devices and things like that, there could be a lot of winter implications as well. Yeah, I've tried to think this one through, especially with the combined DSM, BE, CHP, TEP, all of the letters coming this summer. There's just an incredible amount of overlap in the potential use of this technology across DSP and bleeding into clean heat plan, demand response, both in allowing and enabling the adoption of more beneficial electrification without certain upgrades, but also in terms of the effective control to optimize costs and use of, across the system, but certainly on the distribution portion of the system as well. And so I think I'm generally on board with your recommendations, Mr. Greenberg. I think part of my concern is I don't want to see a ton of delay here. Like sometimes a pilot can have the effect of delaying actual implementation of actual programs. And that's part of my concern. I've been trying to sort through. I mean, to the extent, like, if the company comes forward with a proposal in the CHP, BE, DSM plan, that looked at, rebating or providing like different incentives for this technology, I don't want the pilot to detract from that or delay that. Because to me, there's kind of not a lot of mystery about what technically these devices can do. I think it would be nice to have more aggregated data and performance about, okay, to what degree and with what certainty do those things. But like, I think the promise is pretty clear in terms of what the use case could be. So I guess that's kind of what I'll add. I appreciate Mr. Greenberg and your recommendation having the link to direct testimony in this summer's filing, and I think that will help to bridge that gap and ensure we can have this conversation there. I just don't want the pilot to be a reason we then delay other action or evaluation in the Clean Heat Plan and BE, but I think we can cross that bridge when we get to it and look at the integration there. And I think you've set us up to do that and to have that conversation. And certainly hope, any stakeholdering in the interim will include the appropriate parties. I think having VPP aggregators at the table to understand their use case and things as the companies evaluating this would be really helpful. So I would just add that, but thanks, Mr. Greenberg. This was, the relationship is pretty complicated here, but I think the promise is there. So just seeing some path for this to move forward in a timely way is helpful.
So just so I'm clear, we're gonna, there's a 3-0 vote to support Mr. Greenberg's recommendation, and there'll be some language in the order expressing the concern that the pilot not delay a larger scale implementation. And maybe we'd include some language in the order asking if it's possible to do it more quickly to get the benefit of the summer peak demand, but maybe not requiring it or ordering it or requiring it because we may not have all the facts and understanding we need to ensure that that's reasonable. So did I summarize it right, Mr. Greenberg, or would you say that differently?
No, I do think that's what I heard.
Okay.
Commissioner, I just point out, and I agree with all that. I just point out that part of the 30 days is that, we would render a decision no later than 30 days. So it's possible, if we get a good proposal from the parties, that we could render a decision quicker and maybe be able to speed that up on our end.
Okay. Does that give you what you need, Mr. Greenberg?
It does, thank you. And I'll pass the proceeding back to Mr. Fetters.
Hello again, Commissioners. My next items are a set of staff requests related to advice letter filings, which I'll discuss together. The company implemented the initial DSP decision through proceeding number 25AL0535E, in which it filed its GMAC advice letter compliance filing with the Commission. In its RRR filing, staff asks that the Commission order the company to make an amended GMAC advice letter filing to include any tariff changes necessary to reflect the Commission's final decision in this proceeding. Staff acknowledges that the GMAC took effect on January 1st, 2026, consistent with statute, but notes that if the Commission ultimately approves substantive changes through its RRR, the currently effective GMAC would not reflect those changes. In conjunction with this, staff also requests that the company's amended advice letter filing should incorporate the 2024 TCAD true-up amount litigated in proceeding number 25AL0146E. In that proceeding, the Commission affirmed staff's rate impact cap calculation in order to true up to go through the GMAC. The Commission stated that the true up, quote, shall be included in the GMAC for effect January 1st, 2027, if not addressed through an interim GMAC advice letter filing, GMAC rates effective before January 1st, 2027. Staff argues that doing so through an amended advice letter filing would ensure that the true-up is incorporated as quickly as practicable and would guarantee rate relief sooner rather than later. Finally, staff requests that when the company filed this amended GMAC advice letter filing, the company also file a rate trend report with it pursuant to Commission Rule 3109C. And I have a set of recommendations on this one.
That'd be great.
Advisors note that no changes have been made in these RRR deliberations that affect the 2026 rate up to this point. And in absence of other changes, advisors recommend denying staff's request to put the TCAD refund in effect this year, and instead put it through the 2027 GMAC as originally contemplated in C250931. In the grand scheme of public services rates, the TCAD refund is relatively small. However, a mid-year advice letter change could require substantial administrative work for both the company as well as the Commission and staff, and could make the true-up for 2026 more complex. However, advisors do recommend that the company be required to file bill impacts and a rate trend report in the advice letter proceeding within 30 days of the RRR order in this case, consistent with Rule 3109C.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Goman,
I also agree.
as do I.
Thank you, Commissioners. Now back to Mr. Mendelson.
Mr. Mendelson, take us home.
Righty. We're almost there. So I'm going to take you through a series of clarifications that the company requested. In paragraph 500, the Commission required that the company provide 5 years of historical capital spending by rate class for each major category of spending included in the proposed capital budget. And for example, capacity, asset health and reliability, tools, and communication. The company states that it does not know how to provide the required information because its distribution infrastructure investments are planned at the asset level and not by rate class. And once placed into service, these assets serve all electric retail distribution customers and are not generally dedicated to serving particular classes of customers. The company asks the Commission remove the requirement to report on capital spending by rate class, allow it to report on historical spending data by category. Pause here and provide a recommendation.
I agree with that, RRR, and would grant that request. Commissioner Goman, sorry, Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Goman,
I also agree.
as do I.
Righty, thank you. Okay, on the next item, in paragraph 52 of the decision, the Commission said, accordingly, we find it necessary to require public service to provide, as part of its next DSP, a more thorough evaluation of each of the growth factors represented, including both 5 years historical and 10 years forecast values, and a comparison of historical values relative to the forecast made in the instant proceeding. With respect to capacity checks, we require the company to present the historical number of megawatts requested and the number and megawatt values of capacity checks requested actually served. Further, as referenced elsewhere in this decision, we expect meaningful improvement in the collection and evaluation of AMI data as part of the company's next DSP, so that projections of load growth can be reasonably corroborated. Public Service asked the Commission to clarify that the requirement for the company to report on historical data related to capacity checks, as reflected in this paragraph, applies on a going forward basis, not to prior capacity checks. The company explains that it does not currently have a workable means of presenting a comparison of the historical number of megawatts requested. However, the company can commit to establish processes to enable this information to be gathered on a going forward basis. Pause here or can provide a recommendation.
Yeah, if you can give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
Alrighty, so we recommend granting the commission, the company's request for clarification. We note that the point of the requirement in paragraph 52 was to ensure the company's forecast methods were reasonably accurate. Unfortunately, it sounds like the company will have to implement a mechanism to track the fruition of capacity checks. It should do so and present its progress and associated data in its upcoming DSP.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman.
Yes, I agree. I mean, with some surprise that this is not something that seemingly was being tracked at all. It seems relevant to forecasting efforts to be tracking what amount of customer requests end up in real customer load, but happy that that will be tracked going forward.
I agree as well.
Alrighty. So the next item is related to paragraphs 52 and 88, where the commission directed the company to conduct specific evaluations for presentation in its next DSP, particularly through the analysis of the company's AMI data. The commission said if the company does not have the personnel or expertise to evaluate such data, it should hire an outside consultant to conduct the AMI evaluation and make the consultant available for cross-examination in the next DSP adjudication. Public Service asked the Commission to clarify that the company may defer the costs associated with additional resources or technologies that may be necessary to comply with these paragraphs and authorize the company to bring associated costs forward for recovery through an appropriate future proceeding. I could pause here or offer a recommendation.
Yeah, if you can offer a recommendation, that'd be great.
Alrighty, so advisors recommend to grant this clarification. The company should track the cost of compliance for cost recovery in the appropriate proceeding. Advisors note the AMI data will be voluminous and could be expensive to evaluate. Nonetheless, in order to understand its value, it has to be assessed.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman.
Yeah, I agree, and kind of similar comments to previous. I mean, a key benefit of AMI is all of the data that we can ascertain, especially around load shapes and profiles, especially as we look at increased electrification on the system. And it's notable, that the company's load shapes on electrification and things of the sort have been hotly contested in this proceeding. So, yes, it will take some effort to obtain this data. It sounds like, or I guess process, analyze the data. It's clearly available to the company and really can be incredibly helpful in refining the forecasting, in which we're talking about billions of dollars of investments and ensuring we're right sizing that with information that's already available to the company.
I agree, and maybe we can include Commissioner Gilman's comments in the order. I mean, we just got to get these load shapes right, and it is a multi-billion-dollar issue.
Right. Okay, thank you. The next issue relates to paragraph 75 of the decision, where the commission determines that the public service should explain in its next DSP, as proposed by staff, the proactive approach the company takes in placing additional weight on projects benefiting DIIQ communities in order to correct prior differences in service reliability. The commission states we also require the company to facilitate the record in its next DSP by providing historic and projected reliability data for DIIQ and non-DIIQ communities separately by census block, so that the commission can ensure DII communities have not and will not be served less reliably than their non-DIIQ counterparts. The company suggests the commission clarify that it is appropriate to provide the required information by census block group rather than just by census block. The census block group is the level of granularity the company provides when it files its QSP filings. I could pause here or offer a recommendation.
Yeah, if you can give us a recommendation, that'd be great.
Okay. Advisors agree the level of granularity the level of granularity reported should be consistent with the current QSP requirements.
Commissioner Plant.
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman.
I agree.
As do I.
Alrighty, thank you. My last item is related to Paragraph 165 of the decision, where the commission said, with respect to the company's proposed asset health and reliability spending, we find the distinction between 10 separate subcategories as presented by Public Service to lack the transparency necessary to proceed without further checks and balances. Accordingly, we require the company during the GMAC review and authorization filings to catalog all proposed and completed investment as applicable, and this should facilitate oversight of the company's investment activities by clearly and concisely indicating number of poles, feeder miles, and other statistics of planned and accomplished grid improvement and associated dollars for the DSP and other funding programs of distribution investment, including but not limited to the WMP, TEP, and MEP proceedings. Public Service asked the Commission to clarify that the specified requirements apply to actuals reported through the GMAC true-up process as applicable rather than proposed investment. Public Service also requests the Commission confirm the company's interpretation that it is not required to provide duplicative information to the extent that it is already provided in other proceedings. So I can pause here for your discussion or can offer a recommendation.
Yeah, if you can offer a recommendation, that'd be great.
Alrighty. Advisors suggest the Commission clarify that the company is to provide proposed and actual infrastructure implementation and cost incurrence information, total and unitized. The purpose of the data is to facilitate the evaluation of the company's forecasting accuracy. With respect to the second point, we also recommend the Commission clarify that it is not seeking duplicative information. As far as we know, such projected and actual and total and unitized implementation cost incurrence information is not provided side by side in any filing type.
Commissioner Plant?
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman?
I also agree.
As do I.
Alrighty, thank you very much. And Mr. Fetters is going to handle our last few items for us.
Hello, once again, Commissioners. As Mike said, just a handful of cleanup items left for you. The first is on cost allocation. In this proceeding, Public Service proposed to allocate cost components of the GMAC across classes using the same basic methodologies as authorized in the last Phase 2 rate case. However, Public Service additionally proposed to modify the allocators from that Phase 2 case using a growth factor for each customer class. Sweep NRDC instead recommended GMAC use allocators from the last Phase 2 case without any adjustments for sales changes. In the decision, the Commission agreed with Sweep NRDC and required the company to use the allocators from the last Phase 2 case without any adjustments. Additionally, in paragraph 313, the Commission, quote, directed Public Service to investigate the use of AMI data to develop more precise allocation methods for distribution costs in future proceedings. Public Service requests that the Commission clarify this paragraph, stating that it is unclear which future proceeding this cost allocation requirement applies to beyond GMAC filings, and ask that it should only refer to future GMAC filings as implications for other future proceedings is beyond the scope of this DSP. And I can pause for discussion or have a recommendation on this one.
Yep, a recommendation would be great.
Advisors recommend retracting paragraph 313 from the initial decision. While advisors generally support the continued development of more precise allocators, we think larger scope discussions of allocators belong best in a Phase 2 case, and additionally note that continued use and improvement of AMI data more broadly is discussed elsewhere in the decision.
Commissioner Plant?
Yeah, I agree.
Commissioner Gilman?
I also agree.
As do I.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next is on hosting capacity analyses again, this time regarding time series analyses. As quick background, in this proceeding, IREC and ACE advocated for more granular time series HCA analyses beyond the single point in time analyses currently conducted by Public Service. IREC specifically advocated for 576-hour analysis by the end of 2027, which would look at 24 hours per month for both load and generation. IREC characterized this as providing meaningful variations in hosting capacity while being more efficient than the 8760-hour analyses, which could create both computational and modeling challenges. In its SOP, ACE advocated for the production of both 576-hour and 8760-hour results by Q4 of 2027. And in the decision, the Commission required Public Service to publish both 576 and 8760-hour results by the end of 2027. In RRR, Public Service asked the Commission to clarify that the company is required to publish 576-hour results by the end of 2027, but not 8760-hour analyses. Public Service expresses concern that conducting both would be redundant and computationally complex, that the time to perform and validate an 8760 analysis could make it more difficult to meet the update cadence required elsewhere in the decision, and that the additional granularity would not provide useful information. And I have a recommendation on this one.
That'd be great.
Advisors recommend granting Public Services RRR on this issue. We acknowledge that 8760-hour analyses could add a great deal of computational complexity for relatively little value. We also note that IRAC acknowledged this and presented its 576 proposal as a compromise with substantially similar value but reduced complexity.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
Also agree.
as do I.
Thank you. Next is a quick clarification regarding paragraph 376 of the decision, in which the Commission required Public Service to publish results for its load and generation HCAs at the nodal level, along with the limiting criteria information for each load. Public Service expresses uncertainty around the phrase limiting criteria information for each load and believes that the intention was instead to reference limiting criteria for each node. And advisors agree with this and recommend granting this RRR and confirming the language change requested by Public Service.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
Thank you. Next is a request surrounding Green Button Connect. In the initial decision, the Commission required Public Service to create a detailed plan to improve its Green Button Connect implementation and to file the plan within 6 months of the decision, including timelines for a plethora of reporting improvements. In its RRR, Public Service notes that these developments could impose significant costs on the company should the Commission require the company to proceed with those reporting improvements. Accordingly, Public Service requests permission to defer incremental costs associated with implementing the Green Button Connect improvements required by the Commission and any additional Green Button Connect activities required following the 6-month report, as well as the ability to bring those costs forward for recovery in a future proceeding. And advisors recommend granting Public Services RRR and allowing it to create the deferral.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
Thank you. Next is a request from Public Service to extend the deadline to file a flexible interconnection tariff. In answer testimony and their SOPs, ACE, IRAC, and Tesla argue that Public Service has failed to comply with statute provisions regarding flexible interconnection, that the statute required a flexible interconnection tariff be filed, and that in absence of one, the company was out of compliance. In the decision, the Commission agreed with those parties and required the company to file flexible interconnection tariff within 60 days of the decision's publication date. In its RRR, the company asked that the 60-day deadline be extended to 90 days from a final Commission decision in this proceeding. The company contends that this is essential to design a program that meets the Commission's goals and also safeguards reliability and efficiency of the distribution system, and contends that rushing the process could risk unintended consequences and undermine the customer experience or system performance. It also states that the additional time will allow it to incorporate stakeholder input, fostering consensus and reducing the likelihood of contested issues in subsequent filings. And advisors recommend granting Public Services RRR on this issue and see no reason to deny this additional time for the purposes the company describes.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Gilman,
I also agree.
as do I.
Thank you. My last decision point today is an adjustment of the deadline for Public Services HCA validation plan. Validation is the term used for checking that the HCA's simulation of hosting capacity and limiting criteria actually aligns with real-world conditions. While Public Service validated HCA results for 5 locations on the grid as part of this DSP, IRAC recommended that the company be required to submit a detailed validation plan within 6 months of the decision, characterizing the company's validation as limited and warning that unvalidated HCAs could lead to inaccurate results. In the decision, the Commission agreed with the importance of validation and required Public Service to submit a validation plan within 6 months of the decision. In its R, Public Service expresses concern that this would not be enough time to establish an appropriate validation plan, emphasizing that HCA validation requires careful planning, involves multiple levels of design and testing, and that the large amount of data and reliability and security requirements add further complexity to the process. And the company requests an extension of the deadline to 6 months after this R decision. And advisors recommend granting Public Services request on this issue, agreeing that validation is important and that a plan should be thought through. We also note the number of HCA changes occurring in this proceeding add further complexity and find the company's limited extension request to be reasonable.
Commissioner Plant,
I agree.
Commissioner Goman,
I also agree.
as do I. Is
Thank
that
you.
our last issue?
I believe so. I'll pass it back to Mr. Mendelson and Ms. Dundas for any remaining cleanup.
Great. Thank you, commissioners. That is all the items we had today on our matrix. So I believe we'll be looking at a TBC
Yeah,
decision.
if you could do this one TPC, I think that'd be good.
Okay, just as a quick reminder, the tolling date is the 13th, so we will need a quick turnaround towards the end of next week, but it should be doable.
Okay. Ms. Dundas, final comments, thoughts?
Yeah, really quick, and this might go without saying, but last week you addressed the deadline for what was previously going to be the February 1st performance-based framework filing. I believe this week, based on your other decisions, that would be amended as well to be that there's no filing, so the deadline is nothing. And then just a little clarification on the other deadline ones. Anticipating that there may be another round of R. Did the commission vote on the last two presented by Mr. Fetters that it's 30 or it's the time starts from this R decision or the final decision in this proceeding? I believe the company was asking for the latter, but I may have heard you say the former.
What's your recommendation?
Uh, I believe that's what the company is asking for, and I think that makes sense since some of these issues may result in more R after this.
So that's your recommendation to do it off the latter one?
Yes, I'm not trying to contradict Mr. Fetter's recommendation. I'm just trying to clarify.
Mr. Fetters.
No, I agree with Ms.
So then, yes,
Dundas.
it's my recommendation.
And I may have also tripped on it a little bit when speaking, but yes, the company was asking for after a final decision in this proceeding, and I think that would be appropriate as well.
Not that I want to encourage more R, but I'm fine with that. Commissioner Plant,
Yeah, that works.
Commissioner Goman.
I agree.
Does that give you everything you need, Mr. Mendelson?
I believe it does. Yes, thank you. We'll get started and have a draft for you next week.
And I just want to thank you, Mr. Mendelson, council, Mr. Greenberg, Mr. Fetters, for taking us through some really complicated issues in an expeditious manner and getting us all the materials as quickly and as efficiently as you did. So thanks for that. Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate it.
Commissioner Plant, any final comments, thoughts?
No, I just echo that. Thanks to all the staff and everybody for working so hard on all these big cases, particularly this DSP. And I have no further issues. Thanks.
Commissioner Gutman.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the team, and yeah, that's all.
All right. Thanks to you both for getting us through this, and see everybody I guess tomorrow. No rest for the weary. Thanks, guys. See ya.